Is North Dakota really a good place for working moms? Now you tell me, especially if you're a woman. And the reason to bring this up, there's a new survey by one of those financial website things saying that we are actually number 12 overall. We're in the top 15 in the country. To which I say, as our friends south of the border would put it so eloquently, el toro poo-poo. Based on the evidence I see, this is really not such a good place for working women in general and working moms in particular. But you tell me how it works out for you. The number here is 663-1270, 663-1270. Jim Walsh on SuperTalk 1270. Stream it online anytime at supertalk1270.com. Personal financial website Wallet Hub. We've talked about them before. Based on categories such as child care availability, professional opportunities, work-life balance, the survey ranks North Dakota 12th in the nation overall among the quality of employment opportunities for working mothers. We rank high, supposedly, in terms of child care quality, cost, and pediatricians per capita. And in the solid middle of the pack for professional opportunities for working moms, we're at number 24, and work-life balance, whatever that may mean to you, at number 23. The best overall state is Massachusetts. The worst is Louisiana. But let's talk specifically about our home here, the Peace Garden State, North Dakota. Is it really such a good place for working moms in terms of opportunities and accommodations? Because based on a lot of the women I talk to, friends in my own personal circle, and people my wife knows, people I know, friends of friends, so to speak. And I realize a lot of people are going to say, well, it's anecdotal evidence, you know. A friend of a friend says such and such, therefore you can't go by that. Well, but the fact is, I can't think of a single adult woman I know who would say, yeah, it's really a great place if you're female and a mom and you want to work. They really go out of their way. So much better than everywhere else. I can't think of a single woman that I've met or personally encountered who would actually say that. What they say are things like, oh, yeah, it's kind of rough, or it's the old boy network, and they don't really like to give women too much of a break here. That's what I'm hearing. Now, if you think I'm full of beans, fine, you call and tell me. I'm not going to insult people here. I would genuinely like to hear your opinion. I welcome and appreciate it. At 663-1270. The question is, North Dakota a good state for working moms, a good place to live? Now, with these surveys, you have to look at the methodology and how they come to these conclusions. And frankly, I'm usually not too impressed with these kind of survey things. Mostly they tell people what they want to hear. And of course, the local news outlets are no better. They just basically take the press releases and rewrite them a little bit. Even the best station in town in terms of writing, which is probably KX, they do little more than that. And they're the best station in town for local news. We won't talk about what the others do. Women make up nearly half the U.S. workforce. More than 70% of moms with young children are working. Women earn about 85% of what men made in 2018. They have far less upward mobility. Now, mind you, some people would say that a lot of this has to do with the nature of the jobs women are taking, and there may be some truth to that. But the fact is, it does seem like women don't really get all the great opportunities career-wise that men do. You take a man and a woman who are equally qualified for one given position. And the fact is, here in this state, the guy is going to get the edge because he's a guy. And that's just the way things are done here. That's my perspective anyway. I'm not a feminist. Not a hardcore feminist anyway. I support rights for women. But you have to admit, if you're not a white Anglo-Saxon evangelical Christian male with an R next to your name politically, you're not going to get a fair shake in this state. Let's face it. That's a fact. Now, if your experience has been otherwise, I cordially invite you to call me, and we can talk about it here. Number 663-1270, 663-1270. It's Jim Walsh on SuperTalk 1270, online supertalk1270.com, with more conversation, your calls coming up.
Right now, 43.
On Twitter, Facebook, online, and YouTube. supertalk1270.com.
North Dakota, a good place for working moms? Come on. You gotta be kidding me. But the personal financial website called Wallet Hub says that North Dakota comes in overall at number 12, as in 12th best state in the union for working mothers, for women with kids who want to work. Really? Seriously, they said that. I know a lot of women. I can think, I could rattle off a bunch of names here. I won't, but I could rattle off a bunch of names of women I know in my personal circle who would say, they'd say, oh, come on, that's a lot of money. Well, you tell me, how good a place is North Dakota for the working woman in terms of job opportunity and I guess the accommodations, health care, child care, professional opportunities, work-life balance, whatever that may mean to you. You tell me here, 663-1270. Your input is welcome here at SuperTalk 1270, online at supertalk1270.com. Now, Wallet News, they put out these surveys, and I honestly don't know where they're getting their information. I don't work for them, so I don't know. And I'm not an expert in statistics. I had a couple of courses in college and learned a lot about methodology behind these things and how hinky it can be. But the fact is, for this particular survey, the main findings, and as you would imagine, blue states came in better than red states. All of the worst states listed for opportunities for women are places like Texas, Mississippi, South Carolina, Alabama, and at rock bottom, which kind of surprised me, Louisiana, the Pelican State, which is interesting. You would think somewhere like Mississippi, Alabama, or even Texas would be lower. But no, Louisiana. Alabama's second lowest. But it's just amazing to me that North Dakota came in number 12. 12 from the top, number 1, Massachusetts. And that doesn't surprise me that Massachusetts would be up there, given the political bent of most of the people there. But the real question, of course, is, I mean, we all know that women don't always get a fair shake as far as getting jobs are concerned. How do we deal with this? Progress is going on. It's not necessarily a matter of more government in a lot of cases. I think it's a matter of the changing of hearts and minds, of convincing people that it's in their best interest to hire the best people they can, even if that person happens to be a girl. Know what I mean? Yeah, they got to work on that here. But some of the subcategories here, let me pull this up. The 12th best overall. The best daycare systems. North Dakota came in number 3. Well, we were tied for number 3 overall with Oklahoma, which is interesting. Oklahoma's serious Bible Belt there. But North Dakota tied for 3rd for the best daycare system in the country. Idaho is the worst. And California ranks very near the bottom of the pack for child care. Lowest child care cost, North Dakota is not in the top 5, but South Dakota is. So we can assume that North Dakota's up there somewhere. The lowest gender pay gap. Women's earnings, all other factors being equal as a percentage of men. The best state in the union for equality is New Mexico. The worst is Wyoming. The highest female executive and female to male ratio, the highest, D.C., District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., and the very worst, looks like Texas is pretty low there. The lowest I got here is Texas at 47th. I think my printer ran out of ink or something. Anyway, but the whole point of this is to give you a chance to weigh in. If you're a woman and you work, what do you have to say on this issue? Because I can't believe that there are a lot of women out there who think that things are really so peachy keen in good old North Dakota. But you tell me, if you're a woman, you give me the woman's perspective. I know my wife would certainly not say that. But you give me your perspective here. Number 663-1270, 663-1270. And while we're talking about that, what shall we name the royal baby? I know, nobody cares. I mean, good for them, I guess, but is it really that big a deal? What are they going to go? Well, they obviously didn't go for my idea. I suggested Ignatz. Because let's face it, the royal baby is going to get all the breaks in the world. Got to level the playing field a little bit. In the interest of fairness, let's give this kid some kind of social handicap. Let's give him a really dorky name. Let's call him Ignatz Lipschitz Windsor. His Royal Highness, the Prince of whatever it is he's a prince of. You know, I kind of lose track of all the titles, the Duke of York, the Duchess of Windsor, the Duke of Paducah, the Milk of Magnesia, Sirloin of Beef, whatever. Duke of Earl. Yeah, him too. I love that song. Duke of Earl, Duke. So, what do we name the royal baby? And the answer, of course, is who gives a wet slap, one way or the other. And we'll leave that to our friends across the pond, as it were. Oh, darling. And we must name the royal baby. Pip, Pip, and Jolly Walt. Go on with you now. But good for him and good for her. By the way, this is the first royal baby to actually qualify for American citizenship because of his mom, Meghan Markle, because she's a bloody gank, you know. Oi, hello. That's my cockney, you know. Oh, sorry, squaw, I scratched the record. You know. Or give one of those Monty Python names that's as long as your arm, you know, bum ting diddly do, don't sleep in the subway, darling. One of those super silly names. Anyway, back to the issue at hand here. New survey, local news is talking about it. Personal website, Wallet Hub, and a new data survey evaluating these categories, child care, professional opportunities, so on and so forth. The survey ranks North Dakota 12th in the nation in terms of the best place to be if you're a working mom, if you want opportunities, job opportunities, and you're a mom and you want to work. According to the survey, the 12th best place to be, 12th best state would be right here, North Dakota. I ain't buying it. But what about you? Number here, 663-1270. Of course, you can weigh in at your leisure later on if you like at the website at supertalk1270.com or at the Supertalk 1270 page on Facebook. Good old social media there. Social media. Where is that social media? Oh, yeah, the story about all the people who got banned from social media, Facebook, banning Alex Jones, the conspiracy guy, and Farrakhan, and who else? A couple of those alt-right sphincter muscles. They got banned as well. I want to talk about that a little bit later on. And also about something Bernie Sanders said. I'm not a big Bernie fan. I don't feel the burn. Bernie, I like some of the things Bernie says, but I don't like so many other things. I like his foreign policy as a rule. Don't much care for his economic policy. It's kind of goofy. But he said something last week that I totally agree with regarding allowing ex-cons to have the right to vote, to get it back. I'm totally with him on that. And I want to talk about that in just a few minutes here. And why Bernie, he may be wrong about a few things, but he's absolutely right that we should let people like the Boston Marathon bomber vote once they have paid their debt to society and served their sentence, including parole and all that. We'll get to all that in just a few minutes here. Again, the number, your comments welcomed, appreciated, at 663-1270. My name is Jim Walsh, and this is SuperTalk 1270. With more conversation and your calls coming up. Yeah.
Right now, 43.
Dave Ramsey is heard here. SuperTalk 1270.
Bernie Sanders may be wrong about a lot of things, but he's absolutely right when he says that ex-convicts, ex-felons should be given back the right to vote. Oh, you think I'm full of it? My number, 663-1270. Jim Walsh on SuperTalk 1270, online, supertalk1270.com. A couple of weeks ago, the Democrats are having one of their town hall meeting things, and the question came up about whether or not convicted felons should be allowed to vote while incarcerated or after they get out. Now, Bernie said yes. He said, this is a democracy. We've got to expand it, and I believe every single person does have the right to vote. And then somebody said, okay, well, what about that Boston Marathon bomber guy? What about him? Killed 3 people. Or maybe somebody convicted of sexual assault. And please don't think I'm trying to make a joke here. But the question was asked, should people like that be able to vote? And Bernie said yes, even for terrible people. Because you have a slippery slope issue here. And once you start chipping away and you say, well, that guy committed a terrible crime, we're not going to let him vote. And, well, this person over here did that, we're not going to let that person vote. It's a slippery slope. So he said, I believe people commit crimes, they paid the price, and they have the right to vote. Even if they're in jail or paying the price given to society, but that should not take away their inherent American right to participate in our democracy. Now, that view, of course, is controversial. A lot of his opponents don't agree with him. Of course, all the goofballs on the right, they lined up to go after the low-hanging fruit there. Donald Trump Jr., somebody in the National Republican Committee, and others criticizing him on Twitter. Well, what about the other Democrats? Well, Mayor Pete from South Bend, he said felons should not be able to vote until they're released from prison. He says part of the punishment when you're convicted of a crime and you're incarcerated is you lose certain rights. You lose your freedom. Doesn't make sense to have an exception, the right to vote. Senator Harris of California had a less committal response saying, I think we should have that conversation. Okay, whatever. Well, I actually think Bernie makes a valid point here. Now, how many people are we talking about here? Let's assume that every person who's been convicted of a felony and locked up deserves to be there. Yes, I know it's hilarious, but roll with me on this for a minute here. Humor me. You got about 2.3 million people incarcerated nationwide. Though when you only count the people who have actually been convicted of crimes, it's probably closer to 1.7. This according to the Prison Policy Initiative. And we won't go into the disparity question there. But again, imagine that each one of these convicts, like the Boston bomber or whoever, is there for a good reason. Let's roll with that for a moment here, if you can do it with a straight face. Well, if that's true, aren't they already paying their debt to society simply by being incarcerated? You know, it's like when people would talk about prison rape. There are organizations fighting to reduce the incidence of prison rape, and yet there are people who say, yeah, well, let them get raped. You know, it's part of the punishment. Well, no, it's not part of the punishment. The punishment specifically is that you are to be taken out of society and not allowed to walk on the streets among society for a certain period of time. You got to stay in this place behind these barred windows and barred doors with these other bad guys. And you got to live with them and stay where they are for a certain amount of time. That is the specific punishment. And if you're doing that, as far as I'm concerned, that is the punishment. That's punishment enough. What good does it really do for the rest of society to take away a prisoner's right to have a say? I mean, what are people afraid of? They're going to plan a conspiracy to get a rapist elected president? I'd say the horse is kind of out of the barn on that one, but or a pro-crime candidate? Well, no. I mean, there's not enough of them to do that anyway, even if they wanted to. And even if there was somebody like that out there, a pro-crime candidate, vote for me and I'll let everybody out of prison. Well, that's obviously not going to happen. But even if that were the case, again, you can't not allow people to vote based on your fear that they're going to vote for somebody you don't like. That's not the electoral system. That's not what the system is. The system is not set up to protect you from having people you don't like be elected. It sounds ridiculous, but it's true. And as with so many things in our society that are ridiculous, sometimes people have to be reminded. Now, let's take a specific example. This comes from the Reason magazine website. I love Reason. It's a great publication, and they've actually done several articles on this subject. But they, as I say, take the example of Patrick Murphy, convicted of murder, convicted cop killer in Texas. Nobody's heart bleeds for a cop killer, nor should it. He was convicted of murder for his role in the killing of a Texas policeman sentenced to death. Now, by all accounts, this guy's had a pretty crappy life. Previously convicted of sexual assault, he admits to being involved in a prison escape and a botched robbery that led to the death of the officer in question. He did not pull the trigger, but he was eligible for the death penalty due to the way the laws are set up in Texas and a lot of places. But again, we're not arguing the fairness or unfairness of the punishment. But shouldn't he at least be able to vote for a politician who might change the law and therefore saving his life? Not saying they should. I'm saying he should have that right to do so. And there are plenty of candidates who support criminal justice reform measures, like reducing drug sentences. And shouldn't the people who are most affected by those measures be allowed to have a say in casting their ballot if they so choose? I mean, the point is there's a lot of issues. Let's the drug thing specifically. Since we're talking a lot about the decriminalization of marijuana specifically, and the fairness or lack thereof in prosecuting people because they have a little bit of weed, or maybe some guy sold a bag of weed to another guy. And hypothetically here, let's assume we're all talking, we're not talking kids here, we're talking consenting adults. Some 21-year-old guy gets busted for selling some weed to another 21-year-old guy. He winds up going to prison. Under the current system in most states, he can never vote again. Well, why shouldn't he be able to? Just because he broke the law? I mean, he went to prison and he served out. If he went to prison and he served out his time, paid his debt to society, or even while he was in there, if he was paying his debt to society, what does that have to do with his right to vote? Is it really such a bad thing that we give this guy the opportunity to maybe vote for a candidate who would go a little easier on guys like him in the future? Is that really that bad a thing if he does that? There are a lot of issues that affect prisoners, not giving them any say. I don't buy that. And some other issues. As Reason notes, pregnant women will continue to be shackled during labor. Male and female inmates will continue to be thrown into solitary confinement. Prisoners will continue to be sexually assaulted, often with no accountability for their assailants. Because so many of us in the world of law-abiding citizens just aren't particularly motivated to change the system. It's part of the punishment, right? Where do you draw the line? I mean, the Boston bomber, he's not a nice guy. We're not saying he is. And hopefully you're not going to say something stupid. Yeah, why don't you just let him out of jail? Well, I never said that. But what I am saying is, no, don't let him out of jail, but do give him the right to vote. I think Bernie Sanders actually brought up a very valid point here. Bernie's wrong about a lot of things. But on this one, I think he makes a very good point. I think he's on the money. Why shouldn't we let people convicted of crimes who are in the process of paying their debt for their crimes, why shouldn't they be able to vote? Why not? Don't bother me none. And there are some conservative politicians who actually agree with that. Rand Paul among them. He's been pushing to restore the voting rights of ex-felons for several years now. He's had mixed success. Efforts in other states have succeeded. And we're not even going to go into the issue of people who are wrongly convicted or convicted of consensual crimes. Like I say, even if you want to talk about bank robbers or murderers or sexual predators or people who do things to kids, I mean, that's pretty despicable. But what about somebody who just gets busted for selling a bag of weed? You're really going to take away this guy's right to vote for the rest of his life, let alone now during his sentence? Is that really going to advance justice? Is that really going to make this a better society? Come on. Number here is 663-1270, 663-1270. That, of course, leads into other questions like expatriates, how long they should be able to vote. If you used to live here and you don't anymore, but let's say you're paying taxes here, should you be able to vote? Florida. Somebody brought this to my attention a few months ago. Florida had an amendment. I don't think it went through, but I'll do a little research on that. A Florida amendment seeking to restore voting rights to ex-cons who have paid their dues. Again, we're talking people here who have served their time in prison, who have served out their parole. They are free and clear. And the question is, why shouldn't they be allowed to vote? I mean, I would go with Bernie. I'd take it even further than that. But why not allow people in that situation to at least have the right to have a say in the lawmakers who will make the laws that will affect them? Why the hell not? Does that make me a bleeding heart liberal? Well, I don't care if it does or not. You got a problem with that? 663-1270. Jim Walsh on SuperTalk 1270. More conversation, more your calls coming up.
Right now, 47.
Here's Sean Hannity, weekday afternoons on SuperTalk 1270.
Boy, I could go for a big old cup of Joe right about now, and I had one earlier, but some days you just need that jolt of caffeine. I usually need a big blast of caffeine in my bean just to get going in the morning. Some days are worse than others. Today is one of those days I've been like, I've been kind of schleppy all day. Pardon my Yiddish. All right, Facebook announced last week it was permanently banning Louis Farrakhan, Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos, Laura Loomer, some of these alt-right buttheads. They are no longer, they can no longer go on Facebook or Instagram. And I think Facebook has every right to do that. I do think it's a bad idea to do it. Because bad ideas should be subject to the light of day. Put as much light on those ideas as possible. That's how you protect society. Let everybody see what a bunch of crap it really is. You may have a different opinion. Number here is 663-1270. My name is Jim Walsh. I would love to hear from you today. Facebook made the announcement last week, at the end of the week, banning Louis Farrakhan, Alex Jones of InfoWars fame, the conspiracy guy. He was the guy who made the claim that Barack Obama had fathered 2 African-American children. Remember that one? Milo, the guy with the Greek name, as long as your arm. Laura Loomer and these other losers. No more Facebook for them. No more Instagram for them. Each of these accounts, so says the company, violated the company community standards governing what they call dangerous individuals and organizations. Now, Alex Jones is not one of my favorite people on the planet by any stretch of the imagination. Mostly, I think he's pathetic. And I must admit, it kind of bugs me that we live in a society where a guy like this can get such a following. Maybe some people listen to it because they find it entertaining. Maybe some listen because they just can't believe, it's like a train wreck you can't look away from. But, a lot of people are listening to this guy and actually think he makes sense. God help us all, but that's the truth. I don't get it, but again, Facebook has the right to ban them as a private organization. Now, we've had this conversation before. The First Amendment applies primarily to government. Under the First Amendment, government cannot suppress your speech, although it's not for lack of trying. I mean, I've always said the First Amendment is they should have a little tag underneath saying void where prohibited by law. Having a free speech amendment has never stopped any state in this country, or the country itself for that matter, from suppressing speech they find embarrassing or politically inconvenient. We don't really have free speech in this country. We don't really have a society where you can say anything you. I'm not even talking about the yelling fire in a firehouse and all that, movie house, whatever, a yelling movie in a crowded firehouse. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just saying we don't have the freedom to say a lot of things that make people nervous and make them feel icky. Just ask George Carlin how much freedom of speech we really have in this society. Freedom of speech is not designed to protect polite discourse that a few people might find uncomfortable for their frame of reference. Although there are people who want to patrol even that. But the fact is that Facebook did announce Facebook is a private organization. Basically, they can tell anybody they want. Now, you can't go on Facebook and say these things if you're going to say them, not here. You find somewhere else, find somebody else who will let you. Yeah, okay. And the government's not going to do anything about it. Well, they shouldn't anyway. But again, the idea behind this, as I understand it, there was kind of a loophole on Facebook that allowed people like Alex Jones and InfoWars. They had already been banned by the service, but they kept appearing on it. Unofficial fan pages sharing material. And Facebook now plans to put the kibosh on them with a tool usually reserved for terrorist organizations and self-proclaimed hate groups. It's just hard for me to make that stretch of putting a loser. Alex Jones, he's a butthead, he's a loser, he's so many things, but is it really fair to smear him and group him with people advocating some of the things that, say, your extreme neo-Nazi types advocate? You know, if you got some guy who's going out and telling everybody, kill all the Jews or whatever, Alex Jones may say a lot of creepy crap. But to my knowledge, he hasn't gone that far. Yet, at least. And if he does, then I'd probably say, yeah, Facebook, they probably have a valid point. And fan pages, there's groups that reshare content. Now they won't be permitted. Now, the distinction here is important. As a private platform, I think Facebook is completely within its rights to ban whoever it chooses for pretty much any reason it chooses. But, and here's where a lot of folks seem to have a problem making the distinction, and I don't know why. You can say, yes, they have the right to do so, but is it really a wise thing to start banning everybody who says something awful or stupid, provided it falls short of an actual threat or some kind of illegal activity? Again, the fire in a crowded movie house, they use the old cliche. I would argue, I am one of those who would argue that it's not a good idea to ban these people for a couple of reasons. You know, feeding into the, again, Reason Magazine, they talk about the tendency to try to suppress beliefs that people consider dangerous or evil. Well, again, the whole point of having freedom of speech, if we're going to have it, or at least pay lip service to it, is to protect that kind of potentially subversive speech. You look at what's happening on a lot of college campuses, and the results are not encouraging if you're an advocate of free speech. New Zealand, which the last time I looked was a fairly open society, the U.S. actually could emulate New Zealand in a lot of things. But recently they announced the leading media outlets were going to be censoring coverage of that mass shooting. Remember the shooting a couple of months ago, how awful that was? Well, right after it happened, the big media outlets, they said they were going to do some self-censorship in covering the mass shooting. I'm not crazy about that, and that kind of goes along with the same thing. Yeah, they have the right to do it, but is it a good idea? It's funny how people have trouble making that distinction between saying, well, we think you should be allowed to do this. We just don't think it's a good idea. Should you be allowed to smoke cigarettes in the privacy of your own home if you're not sharing your secondhand smoke with anybody and hurting anybody else? Oh, yeah. Does that mean it's a good idea to smoke cigarettes? Well, no, it's not. As I can tell you firsthand, my wife, who finally quit about a year ago, and I couldn't be happier. And we've had these discussions many times. You know, I would always support her legal right to do it. I just don't want her doing it because I want her to be around for a while. But isn't there a better solution here? Give the users the right to filter and control their content. Again, I don't think it's a healthy thing if you go around blanking out anybody who expresses an opinion that you don't like. Sometimes you can actually learn something from these people, even if they are jerks and buttheads. Sometimes you can actually come up with some constructive ideas. But if you're going to do that kind of thing, do it on the individual level. And let people decide for themselves what they do or do not want to see. So again, my thing is Facebook, yeah, they have the right to cut us off from access to this stuff. They have the right, but that doesn't mean it is right. A lot of people have trouble with that. I don't know why. Smart people, but they have trouble with that idea. Go figure. Well, it's been a great pleasure, I can tell you that. I thank you for allowing me to express my weird and bizarre opinions. We will do it again sometime very soon, I promise you. Comments welcome. Jim Walsh, SuperTalk1270.com. Thanks again.